Someone says the thing, small enough to deny, sharp enough to land. The heat arrives in your chest, and you answer calmly, reasonably, and you have already lost, and you'll carry it, not for an hour. You'll be in the car 3 days later, delivering the reply you should have given out loud to nobody. Not because you were wrong, because they weren't looking for an argument, they were looking for a reaction, and you handed one over, in full on request. Your response is not a defense, it's a payment. And as long as you keep paying, they will keep charging. Now you already know the advice. Don't react, stay silent, and the advice is correct. But there is a version of silence that quietly makes everything worse, and it is the version almost everyone is actually doing. So, which version works, what it does to the person on the other end, and the one number that makes it possible to hold? That last part is the only bit that's genuinely hard. Start with the version that fails, because you have almost certainly used it. Silence used as a punishment is not silence. The pointed one-word answer, the jaw set slightly too tight, leaving the room a beat too deliberately. The performance of not caring, staged for an audience of one. They can feel all of it, and every bit of it tells them exactly what they came to find out. It landed. That isn't silence, that's a reaction wearing a costume. And here's why they always know. Someone who came looking for a reaction isn't listening to your words, they're reading your body. And a body working hard to look unbothered is the loudest thing in the room. There's a second version that looks identical from the outside and is the opposite thing entirely. Staying quiet because you're frightened of the confrontation, swallowing it, going home and running the argument in the shower for 3 days. That isn't restraint either. That's avoidance with better branding. In all 3 cases, you say nothing. The difference is whether you still needed to. Real indifference is boring. It has no edge to it, nothing to push against, nothing to read. If your silence has a temperature, it isn't silence yet, which is why this is harder than it sounds. You don't have to act calm. You have to stop needing them to know that you're calm. Which raises the obvious question. If it has no heat, no edge, nothing to react to, how does something that empty do any damage at all? In the early 2000s, researchers built a game called Cyberball. 3 players on a screen tossing a ball between them. You're one of them. The other 2 are strangers you'll never meet. For a while, everyone plays. Then the other 2 quietly stop throwing you the ball. That's it. That's the whole experiment. No insults, no confrontation. Nothing is said at all. And when they ran that game inside a brain scanner, the region that lit up was the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, a part of the brain heavily involved in processing physical pain. Being excluded didn't feel a bit like being hurt. The brain filed it in the same place. And remember what we're talking about. A meaningless game. Strangers. A ball that isn't real. Being left out of that was enough. So consider what it does when it isn't a game, when it's a person who came looking for a rise out of you and got nothing. The psychologist behind that work, Kipling Williams, spent decades on it. And what's under attack isn't your mood or your confidence, it's your sense of existing at all. Because someone who provokes you is asking a question, not the one they said out loud. The real one is, do I have an effect on you? Do I exist to you? Every reaction you give is a yes. Silence is the one answer that refuses to confirm it. But you need to know what happens next, because this is where nearly everyone gives up. It gets worse before it works. There's a principle in behavioral psychology called an extinction burst, when a behavior that used to reliably produce a result suddenly stops producing it. The first response is not to stop. It's to escalate. Press the button harder. Press it more. So when you go quiet, they will not immediately go quiet. They will come back sharper, more personal, more public. That escalation is not the strategy failing. That escalation is the strategy working. It's the sound of something that used to function, beginning to break, and almost everyone reacts right there, at the loudest moment, which teaches exactly one lesson. It still works, you just have to push harder. Then there's the other instinct, the one that feels like the mature option. Explaining yourself, setting the record straight, making them understand, because if they just saw it properly, surely this would stop. But look at what explaining actually concedes. The moment you explain, you've agreed that they're entitled to a verdict. You've accepted them as the judge and cast yourself as the one presenting evidence. You can win every point in that exchange and still lose, because you already granted the thing that mattered, the right to sit in judgment of you. You do not owe a verdict to someone who appointed themselves. Which brings us to the number. The physical surge, the heat, the tightening, the pull to respond, runs its course in roughly 90 seconds. What comes after that is no longer the event. It's you, replaying it, rereading the message, rehearsing the perfect reply. You are re-triggering the same reaction on a loop and calling it being upset. So the discipline isn't a lifetime of restraint. It's 90 seconds. Feel it arrive, refuse to feed it, let it pass through. After that, whatever you do next is actually a choice, rather than something being pulled out of you. Now let me break the frame for a moment, because this idea gets pushed much too far. Everything described so far is a tool for one specific situation, someone who wants a reaction out of you. It is not a strategy for harassment. It is not a strategy for abuse. It is not a strategy for anything that needs a record. If someone is doing real damage, at work or at home, stillness is the wrong answer. The right answer is documentation, distance, other people who know. Do not let dignity become the reason you stay. For everything else, the colleague, the relative, the person who says the small sharp thing and watches your face, this is the strongest position available to you, and not because you win. Because someone who needs your reaction is telling you something they'd never say directly, that they can't generate their own sense of significance, so they've come to withdraw it from yours. They can say whatever they like. What they cannot do, not ever, not without your permission, is decide how you feel while they say it. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. It genuinely means a lot. If this video gave you something to think about, do one small thing. Subscribe to Cool My Mind Psychology. Every video here unpacks the hidden psychology behind how we think, feel, and act. And subscribing is how you'll never miss the next one. Take care of your mind, and I'll see you in the next video.